Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, this is not the only show on Lions of Liberty. No, we have two other shows. This is the third show of the week. We start the week on Monday with a show hosted by Mark Claire. It is our flagship program, our longest running program, where Mark interviews leaders in the libertarian movement. He also hosts roundtable discussions from time to time and digs deep into disagreements, political and ideological of in nature. On Wednesday, we got Electric Liberty Land, hosted by none other than Brian McWilliams, your favorite bald libertarian comedian, where Brian digs into comedy, culture, liberty, anger, martinis, I don't know, all kinds of different things. And of course, Friday, Felony Friday, where we take a look at this broken criminal justice system. You can get all three shows in your podcast feed delivered to that little phone in your pocket by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. So definitely consider doing that. And if you do listen on Apple Podcasts, we really would appreciate it, or really anywhere you listen, but especially Apple Podcasts. Please go over there, give us a 5-star rating, leave a nice review, say something nice about us. It helps with the little algorithm thingy that they do, which puts our podcast in front of more people. So if you like what we do, if you like the ideas of liberty, you want more people to hear about it, then do that. If you don't, then why are you listening to this? I don't know. Maybe you hate yourself. That's not for me to say. With that being said, today's episode of Felony Friday, this is a very important episode, and I have two guests on today, and really it's a groundbreaking episode. I'm going to get into the details of it, but to give you a little bit of a teaser, my guests, they've both been to prison, and they are working on developing a reality show around what people go through during the transition from prison back into life on the outside, all the issues that they deal with. And introduce my guests in a minute. Before I do that, there's a bunch of notes and things you want to read, and definitely want to check that out on the show notes page. You can find that at lionsofliberty.com/FF180. So check out the show notes page. I'm excited for today's episode. Let's get into it. I want to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I want to thank Tieshae Huntsman and Francine Williams, a.k.a. Teddy B, for coming on today's show and really sharing from the heart, sharing their struggles, what they've been through, but also how they're turning that around, flipping it around, and giving back. And I am so looking forward to this project, to see what comes out of it, because just getting to speak with them there and getting to know them a little bit, I know this is going to be big. I can just feel it, and it's going to powerfully impact a lot of people. So I'm really looking forward to it. And, one of my favorite things, and I talked about a little bit during the show, but just want to dig into it a little bit deeper here. I won't keep you long. But one of my favorite things about this show is getting to talk to people, of course, like Tieshae and Francine, hearing them share their stories, but also seeing people like them, seeing people who have been through the ringer of the criminal justice system. And not only that, but they've been through the ringer of life. They've had struggles growing up. They've had many obstacles placed in front of them. And they talked about it, that really, people don't just end up in prison. People don't just break the law. You don't just all of a sudden, occasionally it happens. Sometimes just somebody breaks the law and it's not out of pattern. But what Tieshae and Francine were talking about, really, they're the root cause of what is going on, of what is causing our prisons to be filled, is it's happening in our communities. It's happening at the family unit level. And these issues, really nobody's addressing them. Of course, our government's not addressing them. They don't give a crap about them. They wouldn't say this, but they're happy to keep prisons full, and they're happy to keep recycling people in and out and in and out, keep that recidivism circle going. But it's so great to see, and there's been many, I could name tons of guests who've come back on this show who they've been to prison, and now they're working hard to change the system, but not just change the system through, like Michael Monsivice, who we talked about, who's really working hard to get people skilled, to have a welding certification when they come out of prison, something like that. That's what Michael's doing, which is great. It's awesome. I love that people are doing that. But what Francine and Tieshae are doing is they're even going back into the community before people go to prison and trying to address those issues there, which I think is just so phenomenal. And that is what needs to be done. If we don't correct the problems there that lead people into the despair, into the depression, into the just bad circumstances that result in people making decisions that put them in a place where they end up in prison, then we're never going to break the cycle. If we don't break the cycle, then what the heck are we doing? So that's why I'm excited. That's why I'm excited about this show. That's why I'm excited to see the reality show that comes from these two. So I'll stop it right there. I just want to let you guys know that if you like the work I'm doing here on Felony Friday with Lions of Liberty, please consider supporting us financially. You can do that by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty and looking at the options we have there to join, to become a member of our Lions of Liberty Pride. There's a bunch of perks we have, from bonus content to merchandise to monthly calls with us and everything in between. Please check it out. Consider backing us financially. If you like this message, if you want it to spread far and wide, if you want to really have an impact, please consider backing us. Or if you drink coffee too, we also have the Morning Roar, our Lions of Liberty coffee. And you can get that by going to lionsofliberty.com/coffee. And all the coffee you buy through that link is going to come back and help the Lions of Liberty in a very small way. So thank you guys so much for your support. I will leave it at that on this beautiful Friday morning or afternoon or Saturday, whenever you're listening to this. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning. My guests today on Felony Friday are Tieshae Huntsman and Francine Williams. They are both ex-felons, and they both have some pretty unbelievable backstories of what they've been through, obstacles that they've overcome in their lives. And we're going to get into all of that. Something really cool that they're doing together is they formed a TV and film production company, and they're currently in production of a reality show. It's called Lyfe After the Feds, and their goal is to really tell these stories and really show the struggles that ex-felons go through from their release from the penitentiary as they're incorporating and getting back into everyday life on the outside. So Tieshae and Francine, welcome to Felony Friday.
Hi, how are you? Thank you.
Well, great to have you guys on. And this is a little bit different having two different guests on. I'm used to one guest, so I'll do my best to juggle back and forth. And feel free to, if I ask one of you a question and the other one wants to chime in on it, just jump in. I mean, don't wait for me to, call on you or ask the question directly.
Okay.
Just, just jump on in and insert yourself. So we'll start with Tieshae first. If you could give my listeners here a little bit of background on yourself. So what I'd like to do, the sort of the introductory question, if you could just talk about sort of where you're from, where you grew up, just a little bit about yourself personally.
Well, okay, everybody, I'm Tieshae. I'm from Watts, California, and I grew up in a really, really tough part. Watts is in Los Angeles. It's like a city inside of Los Angeles. It's very well known for, violence and all of that type of stuff. So I grew up there as a kid. My my introduction to the juvenile system, well, to the prison system, was very, very young as a juvenile. I was misguided, I would say. But at the time when I was a kid, I didn't realize that life wasn't like that. I was accustomed to living in violence and drugs and alcohol and abuse. And it is crazy because I thought about it today. I didn't really realize from a kid that I've been struggling with mental health issues pretty much all of my life. And the prison system, I think that they don't address, that's something they need to address, because instead of them giving me the type of help that I really needed, which was psychological, from a young age, they just threw me in jail. So that's just how I pretty much lived most part of my life. It's just being not listened to, but just put in prison. So, which led me to, I don't know, I was surviving. To me, I was just surviving in my community. This is, a lot of things I had to do. I had to fight. Like I said, I had to struggle. And then the means of making money and living life was selling drugs. You know what I mean? It is sad to say, but that's what it was for me.
Do you remember how old you were the first time that you were exposed to, or you saw selling drugs being sold?
The first time I remember, I probably was about 6, 7 years old. I remember an incident when we stayed in Nickerson Gardens, a project, and I seen this man get beat really bad, like right in front of me. I'll never forget the look on his eyes over drugs. And I was just terrified, and I just was looking, but I mean, that's what life was for me. So, like I said, I thought that was the norm. I thought the rest of the world lived like that. But as I became older, and I realized it wasn't. So life has been a difficult journey for me, but at the same time, I look forward to the new beginnings, the things that I have learned, and different people that I've met, to realize, hey, life is good. It's some goodness in the world. You know what I mean?
Right. So we'll come back to that. I want to dig more into your story, but I want to give Francine a chance to introduce yourself and tell everybody out there listening a little bit about your background and where you're from.
Okay. Well, I'm Francine, also known as Teddy B. But so I'm originally from Belize. It's in Central America. I was born there. I came to California with my mom when I was about 4 years old. We lived in, South Central LA. A couple years after that, my father came along. I had a pretty okay childhood, but I started going through a lot of things with my family. It was different. Like Tieshae's story, we come from two different places. We both were here, but she was on a different side than I was. I wasn't really exposed to a lot of violence and all that really at a young age, but I had a lot of problems within my family, and I had to internalize, a lot of different things. And, it made me push away from my family. I felt like I didn't have anyone, and as a child, sometimes that's really hard to deal with. And just like Tieshae was saying, that's where mental health kicks in. People think that it's because you have a problem, and it's not necessarily that. It's just a lot of issues that we internalize that we don't, deal with them. And at that time, as a child, I wasn't able to deal with those issues. And, I just internalized everything growing older. And, as a teenager, like I said, I had different troubles at home with my family and ended up having to go out into the world at a young age. And, that's when I kind of got exposed to a lot of different things. And, I was experimenting with drugs and all just kinds of stuff. And, later on in life, my mom, she ended up getting breast cancer, and she was like really, really sick. So that's kind of where, for me, things changed when I felt like I needed to step up to the plate. I have 4 younger siblings. So, at that time, I felt like, even though me and my mom had a really estranged relationship for a while, I felt like that was my time where I needed to step up and be there for my family, because it was no one else that was going to be there. And, that led me to make some really, not so good decisions in my life. And, that ended me having me go to federal prison. And, that's how here I am today. Life gave me lemons. I made some really good lemonade from it. Look at us now, so I have to just embrace those things. You know, I used to be really kind of embarrassed of a lot of things that happened. Even me going to prison was kind of embarrassing for me. I really didn't want to talk about it. And then I thought to myself, like, who else better to tell my story than me? You know, I'm the one that can tell it the best. So, you know, and me and Mr. Huntsman, we actually met while we were incarcerated. We were bunkies. Now we're business partners. So,
That's what I was going to ask you guys where you met.
yes,
So okay.
yes. Yeah, so we met while we were incarcerated. We were here downtown at the federal holding facility. It's called MDC. And yeah, we met, and, you know, we started a really great friendship, and I'm really glad that I met her despite of the circumstances, because we've really come a long way. I mean, I've seen so much growth within her over the years, and it's a really good, you know, situation.
So how much time did each of you serve?
Well, technically for me, I had a split sentence, which was 6 months in federal prison, and the other 6 months I had on house arrest at home. But for me, I had never been incarcerated or never been in trouble with the law. So for me, it was still a lot. And regardless of whatever amount of time you serve, you still have to come home and start your life completely over. I couldn't go back to the job I had. I couldn't go back to, you know, I had to start all over. So it was really hard for me.
Yeah, for me, I did a little bit over, well, total with the halfway house and everything, I did over 4 years in federal custody. And I'm currently still really under federal custody because I have 5 years supervised release. So I had a total of 2 years together. And yeah, it's been 2 years this month since I've been out of federal custody, out of prison. And like I said, I'm on supervised release. Hopefully that comes to an end soon. But the way the system is set up, you know, they like to hold on to you for some reason. You know, they don't really let you go and be free. So it's I still don't have freedom. I can't just get up and go wherever I want to go because I have to report to them and get permission and approval, and you know, they just scrutinize everything that you do. They pop up to your job unwanted. You know, a lot of people lose their jobs because of that. The littlest thing, you know, it seems like it will lead you back to prison. It not seems like, but it does. So you have to really walk very, very carefully after the fact. You know, even after you've done your time, you still have to do more time. You know, so it's still difficult. It's tough.
What would you each say is the single hardest thing, you know, in order to transition back in? Was it, you know, getting a job, getting housing? You know, what was the most difficult obstacle to overcome?
For me, I feel like both of those obstacles were hand in hand. It was really hard for me to get a job when I first came back, and you know, I would fill out applications and people would meet me and, you know, they would love me like, oh my goodness, we love your personality and, you know, we want you here. But when it's time you get that job offer and you submit that criminal background check, then you don't get that call back. You know, it was very discouraging for a long time. You know, I felt like I was almost going into like a depression because I was really, you know, just sad about that. I'm like, you know, here I am qualified, and you know, and I just felt like people were really, it was like a stamp on my back. Like I was out of prison, but I wasn't out of prison. It still haunts me now, you know? So
for me, I've had instances where this one particular job, I met the people, I explained to the panel that, you know, I had a background. They was like, that's fine, don't worry about it. But when it went to another lady, I think I ran into somebody like you, sir. And she was like, no, we can't have that. And she fired me. So I had to tell my probation officer. She was like, but don't you have a job? I'm like, no, they fired me. She like, how did you get hired and fired? So now I'm explaining to her. I'm like, listen, they looked at my criminal background and they fired. And then also with housing, for us in California, it's so expensive. So you have to look at it. You come out of prison with nothing. And then you're trying to get a job that's hard to do. And then you try to find somewhere to live, but you can't afford to live nowhere because you don't have anything. You need at least $7,000-8,000 just to move into an apartment. And it's like, how do you do that? And that's where the stress is. And then with the mental health kicks in. It's so traumatic. I have counseling a therapist I go to gladly and willingly, even though I'm ordered by the court to do so as well. But it's so hard. It's many a days that I felt like I wanted to give up, but then I remember being in the halfway house and seeing people who did give up. We were treated so horribly in the halfway house. It was worse than prison. And I see people just give up and they turn back to drugs, or they turn back to a way of life to make them some money because they have nothing. So then they go back to jail. And that gave me the courage to continue to fight just for them people. It's not just about me. I'm fighting for so many people out here across America, across the world, even though it's hard, even though it's stressful at times, I be getting depressed, but I know that with me having belief and faith and being consistent and going and jumping over these hurdles, that it's going to make a difference for somebody else's life. So that's really what Life After the Feds is about.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because I mean that's if I forget how long ago you reached out to me, Tieshae, maybe it was last week or 10 days ago or whatever, but it's a really cool project that you guys are working on. Really, essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be a reality show, really showing the everyday life, the everyday struggle you guys are going through. So, can you kind of talk about like where the idea for that came from, the evolution of it, and just give some background on it?
Yeah, actually, Life After the Feds came about while I was in MDC, Los Angeles, while I was in prison. I was sitting there, I thought about like, you know what, actually, I will watch shows in prison. Just, we watch TV. And it was so much stuff about people being in jail and how they talked about people in jail, how they criminalize, how they dehumanize us, I would say. We just look like crazy animals from their aspect of the way they show it to the world. And then there was no example on what to do when you get out. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I have a business, Southern Taco, that is my life after the Fed. So I said, well, if I could show how to get through this struggle and document it for other people to see, there could be somebody else sitting here in this seat that I'm sitting in and see that and give them hope to come out like, okay, wow, she did it. And this is how it goes. I'm not saying it's definitely a struggle, but just to show them how to overcome. How do you get past those obstacles? So that's why I decided to do this. And that's where it came from me being in jail, just figuring out what to do when I get out. What is it going to look like? What is it going to feel like? I didn't know. So that's where it came from.
Is it the same reasons for you, Francine, or what motivated you to do this?
Well, Tieshae, she is the one that actually came up with the concept of the show. She's the creator. I'm just I'm the facilitator, but she came up with the concept. I mean, I've always thought it was really great and was always 100% backing her and whatever it is, and I actually I got out of prison before she did, but, I kept in contact with her. I would, ride her or, whatever little money I could, put on her account, I would do it for her. I was just trying to be like a friend. Even when I didn't have it, I tried to have it to, help her out because I know what it's like being there and it's hard. People forget about you. You become lost. It's like, and, we've always remained really good friends. When she got out, I would hang out with her. We would go to lunch. I would take her out, different things like that. And she was, constantly telling me about the show. And initially, I was a little apprehensive. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that because I was embarrassed. I was a little embarrassed to talk about it still because I didn't really open up to everyone about that. She would always tell me like, your story is great. You can be an example for someone. Like people love you. Like, you need to get on board. Come on, girl. And then I finally gave in and I was just like, and that was probably one of the best decisions I made to get on board with her on the Life After the Feds. And, we've been doing really good. And I'm glad, like I said, I decided to tell my story on my own. And, like I said, I could tell it the best. So that's kind of how I got on board with Life After the Feds.
So how's the show going to be distributed or published? Or is it going to be like a YouTube show, or are you guys shopping it to networks, or what's the plan for it?
We're currently we're shopping it to networks, but I also want to make sure that we're going independent. We may even do streaming like with Amazon or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
because one thing people don't know is about the networks. A lot of times they like to switch the story up and make it be what they want it to be. For
Absolutely, yeah. I've heard that they'll try to write a script for you, right?
Yeah, and we don't want nothing scripted.
We're not going to do that. You know, they want to put unnecessary drama with the fighting and all of that. No, that's not going to happen. So, definitely remain independent. Like I said, it's several outlets we can go to: YouTube, Amazon. You know, where we can stream it there. But we're going to do what's best for the viewers to see, to make sure that it's real and raw and it's not scripted at all.
So the show will be the two of you, and you also have others involved. Is that right? There's going to be
right here. We have so many different stories from all different walks of life. So it will entail the ins and out of our lives, specifically me and Francine, but also the lives of many other people across this country. So it's kind of like a reality and docu-series. You know what I mean? So I will call it more of a docu-series, because it's going to document not just our lives, like I said, but several other people. And these stories that you're going to hear and the triumph that's come out of them is so amazing. It is
very.
People have come out and really worked so hard to make a difference, not only for themselves, but within the communities that we come from. Because, like for myself, I was a part of not knowing at the time of the destruction that happened within my own community. So I'm going to make sure that I changed that, and I work to fix my community. That's why we have founded the Lyfe After Foundation, which is going to help formerly incarcerated people and their families to get them real resources. I guess Francine can speak to you a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So also in our partnership, me and Tieshae, we founded an organization. It's called Lyfe After Foundation. You know, it's pretty much helping individuals that are formerly incarcerated with their transition back into society, because that's like we between, for me and her, we experienced that without the help, you know, and I think it's easier, not necessarily easier, but it makes you feel a little better when you're getting a little help from someone who's been down that road before.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I can tell you, like, I understand what you're going through. I've been there, you know, I've been there. I'm still, you know, going through it now. My life after the feds continues every day. My record isn't going away, you know, it's still there. So it's just, you know, like I said, you know, helping them with their transition back into society. We're very big on mental health services. So we do try to encourage any participant to, you know, go and seek those services. Right. And we're also very big on, like, you know, family reunification, because, you know, me and Tieshae, we both have children. So while we were gone, you know, coming back home, there is a disconnect between you and your child. You're here, you've been gone all this time. It's, you know, that disconnect between you and your child. You're not working, you don't have any money, you know, you want to spend time with your kids, but you probably don't even really have the resources to do that. So with that being said, you know, we're, you know, planning to host a lot of community engagement events where these people can come out, bring your kids. You don't have to worry about any money or anything. You guys can come and play and have a good time and, you know, just enjoy that time with your kids and your family, because incarceration doesn't just affect the individual. Right. It affects your family and everybody that has something to do with you. So, you know, it's just, you know, like I said, coming from where we come from and the experiences and the road that we've walked down, we just want to be there, that helping hand to help the next individual on their transition.
That's so awesome. And, you know, I think obviously the criminal justice reform movement, whatever you want to call it, it's so cool that it is really, there's, within the past few years here, I don't know exactly when it happened. I think really it's social media that's really the catalyst behind it. But you're seeing so many more people like yourselves who have spent time in prison, who are really helping to drive the change. Who are saying, you know, I've experienced this, I've been through this, and that's exactly what needs to happen, because you guys are really the only ones who can bring about, not necessarily really changing the system. Unfortunately, we need some politicians to make those changes.
Right.
But bringing the resources, bringing the
Right.
resources to people, and because you know where the help is needed from. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out, and I think it does come back to really social. I mean, you guys reached out to me on Instagram, so
yeah, social media has really helped a lot in that aspect, and I think what we're really trying to get the politicians, the people that make the changes to understand is you cannot just throw a person away and that's it. Just lock them up. Figure out what is the root cause of the problem. What needs to be done inside the communities to stop this revolving door of prison?
absolutely.
Why does everything always just send them to jail? Just for the little things, send them to jail. What really needs to be done? It's a lot that has to happen within the communities, within the families. And again, that's where mental health comes in. The stigma has to be taken off, because for me, growing up, we've seen like if people went to mental health, that's the crazy person. No, it's not that you're crazy. It's just that you probably don't have someone there to really understand what you're holding inside. Because me, for myself, I bottled up a lot of things inside. I kept all of my hurt, my anger, and my pain within myself. So when I found myself in circumstances with other people that got really heated and, maybe an argument or something, I exploded and became violent. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to control those issues. I couldn't tell nobody, well, I'm so angry and mad because I was beaten as a child. My parents really didn't want me. I don't know what love feel like, so I don't know how to smile. People look at me such like I'm an angry person. I'm not angry. I just don't know how. I don't know really what happiness and love felt like. I just didn't know. So then I'm always looked at in a certain light, which made me even more angrier, which made me lash out a certain type of way. These issues be addressed. And if for my community, the Black community, we have parents that did not deal with their anger issues. So then you raise children that have anger issues. So it has to stop. And then for me, I have
break the cycle.
I have
Absolutely.
4 children. I have 4 children myself, and right now I'm still transitioning to getting back into their lives and trying to figure out how to love them better and to treat them in a manner to where I hear their voice. I let them talk and let them speak and tell me why they're upset with me, because what I'm saying, that way they don't go out to be these angry children bottling up the hurt and pain that I've caused on them because of the choices I made in my life. So that's why this is very important. As a whole, let's reform the whole community, the whole system as a whole. Right. It is important.
So I'm curious. So you both, it seems like probably somewhere in your past, maybe I don't know if it happened in prison or where it happened, but there was sort of a turning point, right? Where, some things started making sense for you, where you got the motivation or the idea or the catalyst to start Life After the Feds. What really caused you, or this is to both of you, caused you to want to give back, to want to make this change? Is there something that, because a lot of people I'm sure go into prison and they do their time and they're angry, and rightfully so. I'm not judging anybody, and they just get out of there and they're done with it. So is there something that that you can think of to point back to that really was a turning point that made you really want to give back and want to try to change to break this cycle?
For me, I think it was just really the separation from my daughter. That was something that was really, really hard for me. Even when I talk about it now, it makes me a little, because it's really, I felt like what I went through as a child, and, the things that the emotions that I bottled up, and, I just never saw myself being away from my daughter. So when it happened to me, when the feds they came and raided my house. I was coming home from work one day and they just raided my house, and my daughter and me, we were there together. They took me in handcuffs. She's crying, and, all this stuff. And I was just I just could not believe that I had got myself into this, situation. And just I really feel like a lot of the separation anxiety from her, I would cry a lot. Like me and Tieshae were roommates, and I would really cry. Like I would talk to her on the phone. They give you 15 minutes. 15 minutes is not enough for me to have my daughter, no, she was used to having all of my time.
Right.
So now to put that limited, that was really hard. I would get off the phone and I would be sad, and I would go in my, in my cell, and I would cry about those things because it would really bother me. And I felt like, what I was trying to stop myself from feeling as a child, here I am, now I'm putting things on my daughter for her to have, certain feelings or, a way about things. And I was so, I'm not going to say embarrassed, but I didn't even tell my daughter. Like, she was 4 years old at the time, and I didn't want to tell her that I was going to prison. Like, it was just so, like, I didn't want to see her feel that pain. But in actuality, I was saying to myself that it was for her feelings, but it was for mine, because it was just hurting me so much to, say that. So it was just really, that kind of really just opened my eyes. Like, this is not the place for me here, and the treatment that I received there, and or how I saw other people being treated, and just, it was just not a good situation. And, also because I wasn't born here, when I actually was supposed to get released from federal prison, ICE came and picked me up. Because
Really?
yes, because I wasn't a citizen at the time. So when you get a felony, any type of felonies, they try to deport you back to your country. So they took me to Jenna, Louisiana, where they have an ICE holding facility there. And, when I left MDC, they transported me to FCI Aliceville. That's in Alabama. The federal prison, they can send you to anywhere in the United States to do your time. So here I am, way in Alabama. I have no family here. No one's coming to visit me. You understand? It was really, those times were just really hard for me. And, I made it out and I don't want to go back. And, it, like I said, coming home to and experiencing just all the struggles of just trying to, when I came home, I was on house arrest, and they give you a bill for that. So you come home with no job, they put me on house arrest, and then give me a bill and tell me I have to pay almost $100 a month for
It's
them
like
it's
a sick joke.
Yes, for them to keep track of me. And
Or
I'm
you
like, well, where am I going to get this money from? Where am I going to get this money from? I don't have anything. I don't have anything right now.
Then for me, like she said, when I said in that, when I got to federal prison, I dug deep inside. I said, what is going on with me? Why am I doing it? Why am I finding myself in prison, locked up? And then I had children, 4 children, and my kids would actually, my daughter, Ariana, she would email me every day. And she told me that she wanted to, because she couldn't be with me, she wanted to come live in prison with me.
Wow.
So I was, excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
And for your kids that just want to come, they love me so much that they just wanted to come live in prison. It's like, why? How could I have to do something to figure out why am I the way I am and change it? Because I know I'm a good person. Why am I doing these things? It has to be a better way to live. It has to be a better way. So I just dug deep, and I did a lot of praying, and I just soul searched. And those letters from them phone calls that was so short but so impactful. I promised that I will make a change, and I promised that I would do things so that these kids wouldn't be so angry at society and to the world because of what I have done. And they didn't understand why they wanted to lock their mother up. Like, I was the best person on the planet to them. Like, why would they want to put my mommy in jail? What did she do so bad? So I think about all of the women that was in there with me, and men whose thousands and hundreds of thousands of children have been left behind with that hurt and pain.
Right.
And maybe their parents didn't have a chance to really think while they were in there to change, because the world in there is so crazy at times. You don't really have a chance to sit back. Some people don't. Fortunately for me, I took that time to really evaluate myself, to change myself, and to figure out why was I so hurt. And I let go a lot of my childhood hurt. I let it go. I left it there in prison. Because had I brought it back home with me again, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be able to stand up for other people. I wouldn't be able to stand up for my children and help them heal. So that's why,
Absolutely.
I've made this decision to do what I'm doing. You have to excuse me, and I've just got kind of emotional.
No, that's
okay.
fine. And I mean,
it's okay.
I'll tell you, I mean, you two are going to make a big impact with Life After the Feds. I can tell. I mean, I can tell you right now, with both of your personalities, how honest you are. I mean, I can't wait to see it. It's going to be big.
Thank
you.
With that being said, could you just tell people? I don't know. I mean, you guys have an Instagram account. I don't know what else you guys have. Where can they find you? Where can they follow what you're working on and the progress of the project and all that stuff?
Want to tell them?
Oh yeah, okay, I'll tell them. They can find us on Instagram. It's Life After the Feds, and it's Life spelled with a Y, so Lyfe after the Feds. And if they want to look up our website for our organization, if anybody wants to make any donations or anything, they can go to our website. It's lifeafter.org, and like I said, it's Life with a Y. And yeah, so yeah.
And follow her, Teddy B.
Oh yeah, you can follow my personal account as well. I'm a little bit of my Life After the Feds. I'm doing the foundation with Miss Huntsman as well. But I feel like I have a great personality, and I've always been told like I'm very funny, and people always come ask me for advice and things like that. So in the future, in the near future, I'm going to be having my own YouTube show. It's going to be called 2 Cents with Teddy B.
Cool.
Sense, like common sense, so I'm gonna be just having conversations with other people and just getting their input on different situations and putting my 2 cents on that. So follow me, Teddy B.
Yeah, and then for me, my Life After the Feds is Southern Taco, because I'm a chef. I cook. That's my passion. That's my
awesome.
gift. Yeah, so you can look at my website. It's www.southerntacoinc.com, and that's where you can see all the skills and abilities I have. I do catering, so if y'all want to book me, go find me there. And check this out, Life After the Feds. I always say #LATF.
Yes, #LATF.
That's fantastic, and I'll link to all of that on our show notes page, so everybody can check all of that out. And I just want to thank you guys so much for coming on the show and sharing your story, because this alone is so powerful. Doing this interview, and this will reach a lot of people. But then from there, I mean, with Life After the Feds, you guys are going to have a huge impact. So I can't wait to see what happens.
And
thank you so much for having us.
Thank you and your platform, because it's much needed.
Yes.
No,
really
you're welcome. You're very welcome.
The way, because your platform needs to be used on a huge level, because Felony Fridays, and I think it's really awesome what you're doing, even giving us, letting our voice
the opportunity.
So you are a part of this process of Life After the Feds, because if it wasn't for people like you, hey, we wouldn't be heard. And that's just honest.
I'm glad to play a very, very small part in that. But thank you both very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I want to thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I want to thank Tieshae Huntsman and Francine Williams, a.k.a. Teddy B, for coming on today's show and really sharing from the heart, sharing their struggles, what they've been through, but also how they're turning that around, flipping it around, and giving back. And I am so looking forward to this project, to see what comes out of it, because just getting to speak with them there and getting to know them a little bit, I know this is going to be big. I can just feel it, and it's going to powerfully impact a lot of people. So I'm really looking forward to it. And one of my favorite things, and I talked about a little bit during the show, but I just want to dig into it a little bit deeper here. I won't keep you long. But one of my favorite things about this show is getting to talk to people, of course, like Tieshae and Francine, hearing them share their stories, but also seeing people like them, seeing people who have been through the ringer of the criminal justice system. And not only that, but they've been through the ringer of life. They've had struggles growing up. They've had many obstacles placed in front of them. And they talked about it that really, people don't just end up in prison. People don't just break the law. You don't just all of a sudden, occasionally it happens. Sometimes just somebody breaks the law and it's not out of pattern. But what Tieshae and Francine were talking about, really, the root cause of what is going on, of what is causing our prisons to be filled, it's happening in our communities. It's happening at the family unit level. And these issues, really nobody's addressing them. Of course, our government's not addressing them. They don't give a crap about them. They wouldn't say this, but they're happy to keep prisons full. And they're happy to keep recycling people in and out, keep that recidivism circle going. But it's so great to see. And there's been many, I could name tons of guests who've come back on this show who they've been to prison and now they're working hard to change the system, but not just change the system through, like Michael Monsivice, who we talked about, who's really working hard to get people skilled, to have a welding certification when they come out of prison, something like that. That's what Michael's doing, which is great. It's awesome. I love that people are doing that. But what Francine and Tieshae are doing is they're even going back into the community before people go to prison and trying to address those issues there, which I think is just so phenomenal. And that is what needs to be done. If we don't correct the problems there that lead people into the despair, into the depression, into the just bad circumstances that result in people making decisions that put them in a place where they end up in prison, then we're never going to break the cycle. If we don't break the cycle, then what the heck are we doing? So that's why I'm excited. That's why I'm excited about this show. That's why I'm excited to see the reality show that comes from these two. So I'll stop it right there. I just want to let you guys know that if you like the work I'm doing here on Felony Friday with Lions of Liberty, please consider supporting us financially. You can do that by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty and looking at the options we have there to join, to become a member of our Lions of Liberty Pride. There's a bunch of perks we have, from bonus content to merchandise to monthly calls with us and everything in between. Please check it out. Consider backing us financially. If you like this message, if you want it to spread far and wide, if you want to really have an impact, please consider backing us. Or if you drink coffee too, we also have the Morning Roar, our Lions of Liberty coffee. And you can get that by going to lionsofliberty.com/coffee. And all the coffee you buy through that link is going to come back and help the Lions of Liberty in a very small way. So thank you guys so much for your support. I will leave it at that on this beautiful Friday morning or afternoon or Saturday, whenever you're listening to this. And I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.